Dame Jane Morris Goodall, born Valerie Jane Morris Goodall, April 3, 1934. Formerly Baroness Jane Van Law Goodall, is an English zoologist, primatologist, and anthropologist. She is considered the world's foremost expert on chimpanzees, after 60 years studying the social and family interactions of wild chimpanzees. Goodall first went to Goms Stream National Park in Tanzania to observe its chimpanzees in 1960. She is the founder of the Jane Goodall Institute and the Roots and Shoots program, and she has worked extensively on conservation and animal welfare issues. As of 2022, she is on the board of the Non-Human Rights Project. In April 2002, she was named a United Nations Messenger of Peace. Goodall is an honorary member of the World Future Council. Early life. Valerie Jane Morris Goodall was born in April 1934 in Hampstead, London, to businessman Mortimer Herbert Morris Goodall, 1907 to 2001, and Margaret My Family Joseph, 1906 to 2000, a novelist from Milford Haven, Pembrokeshire, who wrote under the name Van Morris Goodall. The family later moved to Bournemouth, and Goodall attended Upland School, an independent school in nearby Poole. As a child, Goodall's father gave her a stuffed toy chimpanzee named Jubilee as an alternative to a teddy bear. Goodall has said her fondness for it sparked her early love of animals, commenting, "My mother's friends were horrified by this toy, thinking it would frighten me and give me nightmares." Jubilee still sits on Goodall's dresser in London. Africa. Goodall had always been drawn to animals and Africa, which brought her to the farm of a friend in the Kenya Highlands in 1957. From there, she obtained work as a secretary, and acting on her friend's advice, she telephoned Louis Leakey, the Kenyan archaeologist and paleontologist, with no other thought than to make an appointment to discuss animals. Leakey, believing that the study of existing great apes could provide indications of the behavior of early hominids, was looking for a chimpanzee researcher, though he kept the idea to himself. Instead, he proposed that Goodall work for him as a secretary. After obtaining approval from his co-researcher and wife, British paleoanthropologist Mary Leakey, Lewis sent Goodall to Olduvai Gorge in Tanganyika, modern Tanzania, where he laid out his plans. In 1958, Leakey sent Goodall to London to study primate behavior with Osman Hill and primate anatomy with John Napier. Leakey raised funds, and on July 14, 1960, Goodall went to Goms Stream National Park, becoming the first of what would come to be called the Trimates. She was accompanied by her mother, whose presence was necessary to satisfy the requirements of David Anstey, chief warden, who was concerned for their safety. Goodall credits her mother with encouraging her to pursue a career in primatology, a male-dominated field at the time. Goodall has stated that women were not accepted in the field when she started her research in the late 1950s. As of 2019, the field of primatology is made up almost evenly of men and women, in part thanks to the trailblazing of Goodall and her encouragement of young women to join the field. Leakey arranged funding, and in 1962, he sent Goodall, who had no degree, to the University of Cambridge. She was the 8th person to be allowed to study for a PhD at Cambridge without first having obtained a bachelor's degree. She went to Newnham College, Cambridge, where she received her Bachelor of Arts in Natural Sciences by 1964, which is when she went up to the New Darwin College, Cambridge, for a Doctor of Philosophy in Ethology. Her thesis was completed in 1966 under the supervision of Robert Hind on the behavior of free-living chimpanzees, detailing her first 5 years of study at the Gom Reserve. On June 19, 2006, the Open University of Tanzania awarded her an honorary Doctor of Science degree. Work. Research at Goms Stream National Park. Goodall studied chimpanzee social and family life beginning with the Kasakala chimpanzee community in Goms Stream National Park, Tanzania, in 1960. She found that it isn't only human beings who have personality, who are capable of rational thought and emotions like joy and sorrow. She also observed behaviors such as hugs, kisses, pats on the back, and even tickling, what we consider human actions. Goodall insists that these gestures are evidence of the close, supportive, affectionate bonds that develop between family members and other individuals within a community, which can persist throughout a lifespan of more than 50 years. Goodall's research at Goms Stream challenged two long-standing beliefs of the day: that only humans could construct and use tools, and that chimpanzees were vegetarians. While observing one chimpanzee feeding at a termite mound, she watched him repeatedly place stalks of grass into termite holes, then remove them from the hole covered with clinging termites, effectively fishing for termites. The chimpanzees would also take twigs from trees and strip off the leaves to make the twig more effective, a form of object modification that is the rudimentary beginnings of toolmaking. Humans had long distinguished themselves from the rest of the animal kingdom as man the toolmaker. In response to Goodall's revolutionary findings, Louis Leakey wrote, "We must now redefine man, redefine tool, or accept chimpanzees as human." In contrast to the peaceful and affectionate behaviors she observed, Goodall also found an aggressive side of chimpanzee nature at Stream. She discovered that chimpanzees will systematically hunt and eat smaller primates such as colobus monkeys. Goodall watched a hunting group isolate a colobus monkey high in a tree and block all possible exits. Then one chimpanzee climbed up and captured and killed the colobus. The others then each took parts of the carcass, sharing with other members of the troop in response to begging behaviors. The chimpanzees at kill and eat as much as 1/3 of the colobus population in the park each year. This alone was a major scientific find that challenged previous conceptions of chimpanzee diet and behavior. Goodall also observed the tendency for aggression and violence within chimpanzee troops. Goodall observed dominant females deliberately killing the young of other females in the troop to maintain their dominance, sometimes going as far as cannibalism. She says of this revelation, "During the first 10 years of the study I had believed that the chimpanzees were, for the most part, rather nicer than human beings. Then suddenly we found that chimpanzees could be brutal, that they, like us, had a darker side to their nature." She described the 1974 to 1978 chimpanzee war in her 1990 memoir, Through a Window, My 30 Years with the Chimpanzees of Guam. Her findings revolutionized contemporary knowledge of chimpanzee behavior and were further evidence of the social similarities between humans and chimpanzees. Goodall set herself apart from convention by naming the animals in her studies of primates instead of assigning each a number. Numbering was a nearly universal practice at the time and was thought to be important in the removal of oneself from the potential for emotional attachment to the subject being studied. Setting herself apart from other researchers also led her to develop a close bond with the chimpanzees and to become the only human ever accepted into chimpanzee society. She was the lowest-ranking member of a troop for a period of 22 months. Among those whom Goodall named during her years in Guam were David Graybeard, a gray-chinned male who first warmed up to Goodall; Goliath, a friend of David Graybeard, originally the alpha male named for his bold nature; Mike, who through his cunning and improvisation displaced Goliath as the alpha male; Humphrey, a big, strong, bullysome male; Gigi, a large, sterile female who delighted in being the aunt of any young chimps or humans; Mr. McGregor, a belligerent older male; Flo, a motherly, high-ranking female with a bulbous nose and ragged ears, and her children, Figgin, Fabin, Freud, Fifi, and Flint; Frodo, Fifi's second oldest child, an aggressive male who would frequently attack Jane and ultimately forced her to leave the troop when he became alpha male. Jane Goodall Institute. In 1977, Goodall established the Jane Goodall Institute, JGI, which supports the GOM research, and she is a global leader in the effort to protect chimpanzees and their habitats. With 19 offices around the world, the JGI is widely recognized for community-centered conservation and development programs in Africa. Its global youth program, Roots and Shoots, began in 1991 when a group of 16 local teenagers met with Goodall on her back porch in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. They were eager to discuss a range of problems they knew about from first-hand experience that caused them deep concern. The organization has over 10,000 groups in over 100 countries as of 2010. In 1992, Goodall founded the Chimpanga Chimpanzee Rehabilitation Center in the Republic of Congo to care for chimpanzees orphaned due to bushmeat trade. The rehabilitation houses over 100 chimps over its 3 islands. In 1994, Goodall founded the Lake Tanganyika Catchment Reforestation and Education, TACARE or Take Care, pilot project to protect chimpanzees' habitat from deforestation by reforesting hills around Gom while simultaneously educating neighboring communities on sustainability and agriculture training. The Thackeray Project also supports young girls by offering them access to reproductive health education and through scholarships to finance their college tuition. Owing to an overflow of handwritten notes, photographs, and data piling up at Jane's home in Dar es Salaam in the mid-1990s, the Jane Goodall Institute Center for Primate Studies was created at the University of Minnesota to house and organize this data. As of 2011, all of the original Jane Goodall archives reside there and have been digitized, analyzed, and placed in an online database. On March 17, 2011, Duke University spokesman Carl Bates announced that the archives will move to Duke, with an E. Pusey, Duke's chairman of evolutionary anthropology, overseeing the collection. Pusey, who managed the archives in Minnesota and worked with Goodall in Tanzania, had worked at Duke for a year. In 2018 and 2020, Goodall partnered with friend and CEO Michael Camerata on 2 natural product lines from Schmidt's Naturals and Neptune Wellness Solutions. 5% of every sale benefited the Jane Goodall Institute. As of 2004, Goodall devotes virtually all of her time to advocacy on behalf of chimpanzees and the environment, traveling nearly 300 days a year. Goodall is also on the advisory council for the world's largest chimpanzee sanctuary outside of Africa, Save the Chimps in Fort Pierce, Florida. Jane Goodall is an advisory board member for the Society for the Protection of Underground Networks, SPUN. Activism. Goodall credits the 1986 Understanding Chimpanzees Conference, hosted by the Chicago Academy of Sciences, with shifting her focus from observation of chimpanzees to a broader and more intense concern with animal-human conservation. She is the former president of Advocates for Animals, an organization based in Edinburgh, Scotland, that campaigns against the use of animals in medical research, zoos, farming, and sport. She is a vegetarian and advocates the diet for ethical, environmental, and health reasons. In The Inner World of Farm Animals, 2009, Goodall writes that farm animals are far more aware and intelligent than we ever imagined and, despite having been bred as domestic slaves, they are individual beings in their own right. As such, they deserve our respect and our help. Who will plead for them if we are silent? Goodall has also said, thousands of people who say they love animals sit down once or twice a day to enjoy the flesh of creatures who have been treated so with little respect and kindness just to make more meat. In 2021, Goodall became a vegan and authored a cookbook titled Eat Meat Less. Goodall is an outspoken environmental advocate, speaking on the effects of climate change on endangered species such as chimpanzees. Goodall, alongside her foundation, collaborated with NASA to use satellite imagery from the Landsat series to remedy the effects of deforestation on chimpanzees and local communities in Western Africa by offering the villagers information on how to reduce activity and preserve their environment. To ensure the safe and ethical treatment of animals during ethological studies, Goodall, alongside Professor Mark Bekoff, founded the organization Ethologists for the Ethical Treatment of Animals in 2000. In 2008, Goodall gave a lecture entitled Reason for Hope at the University of San Diego's Joan B. Kroc Institute for Peace and Justice, and in the same year demanded the European Union end the use of medical research on animals and ensure more funding for alternative methods of medical research. She controversially described Edinburgh Zoo's new primate enclosure as a wonderful facility where monkeys are probably better off than those living in the wild in an area like Badongo, where 1 in 6 gets caught in a wire snare, and countries like Congo, where chimpanzees, monkeys, and gorillas are shot for food commercially. This was in conflict with advocates for animals' position on captive animals. In June that year, she resigned the presidency of the organization which she had held since 1998, citing her busy schedule and explaining, "I just don't have time for them." Goodall is a patron of the population-concerned charity Population Matters and as of 2017 is an ambassador for Disney Nature. In 2010, Goodall, through JGI, formed a coalition with a number of organizations such as the Wildlife Conservation Society, WCS, and the Humane Society of the United States, HSUS, and petitioned to list all chimpanzees, including those that are captive, as endangered. In 2015, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, USFWS, announced that they would accept this rule and that all chimpanzees would be classified as endangered. In 2011, she became a patron of the Australian animal protection group Voiceless. I have for decades been concerned about factory farming, in part because of the tremendous harm inflicted on the environment, but also because of the shocking ongoing cruelty perpetuated on millions of sentient beings. In 2012, she took on the role of challenger for the Engage in Conservation Challenge with the DO School, formerly known as the DNF Academy. She worked with a group of aspiring social entrepreneurs to create a workshop to engage young people in conserving biodiversity and to tackle a perceived global lack of awareness of the issue. In 2014, Goodall wrote to Air France executives, criticizing the airline's continued transport of monkeys to laboratories. Goodall called the practice cruel and traumatic for the monkeys involved. The same year, Goodall also wrote to the National Institutes of Health, NIH, to criticize maternal deprivation experiments on baby monkeys in NIH laboratories. Prior to the 2015 UK general election, she endorsed the parliamentary candidacy of the Green Party's Caroline Lucas. She is a critic of fox hunting and signed a letter to members of Parliament in 2015 opposing the Conservative Prime Minister David Cameron's plan to amend the Hunting Act 2004. In August 2019, Goodall was honored for her contributions to science with a bronze sculpture in Midtown Manhattan alongside 9 other women, part of the Statues for Equality project. In 2020, she advocated for ecocide, mass damage or destruction of nature, to be made an international crime, stating, "The concept of ecocide is long overdue. It could lead to an important change in the way people perceive and respond to the current environmental crisis." That same year, Goodall vowed to plant 5 million trees, part of the 1 trillion tree initiative founded by the World Economic Forum. In 2021, Goodall called on the EU Commission to abolish caging of farm animals. In 2021, Goodall joined the Rewriting Extinction campaign to fight the climate and biodiversity crisis through comics. She is listed as a contributor to the book The Most Important Comic Book on Earth, Stories to Save the World, which was released on October 28, 2021 by DK. Personal life. Goodall has married twice. On March 28, 1964, she married a Dutch nobleman, wildlife photographer Baron Hugo van Laak, at Chelsea Old Church, London, and became known during their marriage as Baroness Jane van Laak Goodall. The couple had a son, Hugo Eric Lewis, born 1967. They divorced in 1974. The following year, she married Derek Bryce's son, a member of Tanzania's parliament and the director of that country's national parks. Bryce's son died of cancer in October 1980. Owing to his position in the Tanzanian government as head of the country's national park system, Bryce's son could protect Goodall's research project and implement an embargo on tourism at GOM. Goodall has stated that dogs are her favorite animal. Goodall has prosopagnosia, which makes it difficult to recognize familiar faces. Religion and spirituality. Goodall was raised in a Christian Congregationalist family. As a young woman, she took night classes in theosophy. Her family were occasional churchgoers, but Goodall began attending more regularly as a teenager when the church appointed a new minister, Trevor Davies. He was highly intelligent, and his sermons were powerful and thought-provoking. I could have listened to his voice for hours. I fell madly in love with him. Suddenly, no one had to encourage me to go to church. Indeed, there were never enough services for my liking. Of her later discovery of the atheism and agnosticism of many of her scientific colleagues, Goodall wrote that, "Fortunately, by the time I got to Cambridge, I was 27 years old, and my beliefs had already molded, so that I was not influenced by these opinions." In her 1999 book Reason for Hope, A Spiritual Journey, Goodall describes the implications of a mystical experience she had at Notre Dame Cathedral in 1977. "Since I cannot believe that this was the result of chance, I have to admit anti-chance. And so, I must believe in a guiding power in the universe. In other words, I must believe in God." When asked if she believes in God, Goodall said in September 2010, "I don't have any idea of who or what God is. But I do believe in some great spiritual power." I feel it particularly when I'm out in nature. It's just something that's bigger and stronger than what I am or what anybody is. I feel it, and it's enough for me. When asked in the same year if she still considers herself a Christian, Goodall told The Guardian, "I suppose so. I was raised as a Christian," and stated that she saw no contradiction between evolution and belief in God. In her foreword to the 2017 book The Intelligence of the Cosmos by Ervin Laszlo, a philosopher of science who advocates quantum consciousness theory, Goodall wrote, "We must accept that there is an intelligence driving the process of evolution, that the universe and life on Earth are inspired and informed by an unknown and unknowable creator, a supreme being, a great spiritual power." Criticism: names instead of numbers. Goodall used unconventional practices in her study, for example, naming individuals instead of numbering them. At the time, numbering was used to prevent emotional attachment and loss of objectivity. Goodall wrote in 1993, "When in the early 1960s, I brazenly used such words as childhood, adolescence, motivation, excitement, and mood, I was much criticized. Even worse was my crime of suggesting that chimpanzees had personalities. I was ascribing human characteristics to non-human animals and was thus guilty of that worst of ethological sins, anthropomorphism." Feeding stations. Many standard methods aim to avoid interference by observers, and in particular some believe that the use of feeding stations to attract GOM chimpanzees has altered normal foraging and feeding patterns and social relationships. This argument is the focus of a book published by Margaret Power in 1991. It has been suggested that higher levels of aggression and conflict with other chimpanzee groups in the area were due to the feeding, which could have created the wars between chimpanzee social groups described by Goodall, aspects of which she did not witness in the years before artificial feeding began at GOM. Thus, some regard Goodall's observations as distortions of normal chimpanzee behavior. Goodall herself acknowledged that feeding contributed to aggression within and between groups, but maintained that the effect was limited to alteration of the intensity and not the nature of chimpanzee conflict, and further suggested that feeding was necessary for the study to be effective at all. Craig Stanford of the Jane Goodall Research Institute at the University of Southern California states that researchers conducting studies with no artificial provisioning have a difficult time viewing any social behavior of chimpanzees, especially those related to intergroup conflict. Some recent studies, such as those by Cricket Sans in the Gualago Triangle, Congo, and Christoph Bosch in the Tai National Park, Ivory Coast, have not shown the aggression observed in the GOM studies. However, other primatologists disagree that the studies are flawed. For example, Jim Moore provides a critique of Margaret Power's assertions, and some studies of other chimpanzee groups have shown aggression similar to that in GOM, even in the absence of feeding. Plagiarism and Seeds of Hope. On March 22, 2013, Hachette Book Group announced that Goodall's and co-author Gail Hudson's new book, Seeds of Hope, would not be released on April 2 as planned due to the discovery of plagiarized portions. A reviewer for The Washington Post found unattributed sections that were copied from websites about organic tea and tobacco and an amateurish astrology site, as well as from Wikipedia. Goodall apologized and stated, "It is important to me that the proper sources are credited, and I will be working diligently with my team to address all areas of concern. My goal is to ensure that when this book is released, it is not only up to the highest of standards, but also that the focus be on the crucial messages it conveys." The book was released on April 1, 2014, after review and the addition of 57 pages of endnotes. Possibility of undiscovered species. Goodall is known to support the possibility that undiscovered species of primates may still exist today, including cryptids such as Sasquatch, Yeren, and other types of Bigfoot. She has talked about this possibility in various interviews and debates. In 2012, when the Huffington Post asked her about it, Goodall replied, "I'm fascinated and would actually love them to exist," adding, "Of course, it's strange that there has never been a single authentic hide or hair of the Bigfoot, but I've read all the accounts." In popular culture, Gary Larson cartoon incident. One of Gary Larson's Far Side cartoons shows two chimpanzees grooming. One finds a blonde human hair on the other and inquires, conducting a little more research, "With that Jane Goodall tramp?" Goodall herself was in Africa at the time, and the Jane Goodall Institute thought this was in bad taste and had its lawyers draft a letter to Larson and his distribution syndicate in which they described the cartoon as an atrocity. They were stymied by Goodall herself. When she returned and saw the cartoon, she stated that she found the cartoon amusing. Since then, all profits from sales of a shirt featuring this cartoon have gone to the Jane Goodall Institute. Goodall wrote a preface to the Far Side Gallery 5, detailing her version of the controversy, and the Institute's letter was included next to the cartoon in the complete Far Side collection. She praised Larson's creative ideas, which often compare and contrast the behavior of humans and animals. In 1988, when Larson visited Goodall's research facility in Tanzania, he was attacked by a chimpanzee named Frodo. Lego. On March 3, 2022, in celebration of Women's History Month and International Women's Day, the LEGO Group issued set number 40530, a Jane Goodall tribute, depicting a Jane Goodall minifigure and 3 chimpanzees in an African forest scene. Radio 4 Today program. On December 31, 2021, Goodall was the guest editor of the BBC Radio 4 Today program. She chose Francis Collins to be presenter of Thought for the Day. Awards and recognition. Goodall has received many honors for her environmental and humanitarian work, as well as others. She was named a Dame Commander of the Order of the British Empire in an investiture held at Buckingham Palace in 2004. In April 2002, Secretary-General Kofi Annan named Goodall a United Nations Messenger of Peace. Her other honors include the Tyler Prize for Environmental Achievement, the French Legion of Honor, Medal of Tanzania, Japan's prestigious Kyoto Prize, the Benjamin Franklin Medal in Life Science, the Gandhi King Award for Nonviolence, and the Spanish Prince of Asturias Awards. Goodall is also a member of the advisory board of BBC Wildlife magazine and a patron of Population Matters, formerly the Optimum Population Trust. Goodall has received many tributes, honors, and awards from local governments, schools, institutions, and charities around the world. Goodall is honored by the Walt Disney Company with a plaque on the Tree of Life at Disney's Animal Kingdom theme park, alongside a carving of her beloved David Greybeard, the original chimpanzee that approached Goodall during her first year at GOM. She is a member of both the American Academy of Arts and Sciences and the American Philosophical Society. In 2010, Dave Matthews and Tim Reynolds held a benefit concert at DAR Constitution Hall in Washington, D.C. to commemorate GOM 50, a global celebration of Jane Goodall's pioneering chimpanzee research and inspiring vision for our future. Time magazine named Goodall as one of the 100 most influential people in the world in 2019. In 2021, she received the Templeton Prize. In 2022, Dr. Goodall received the Stephen Hawking Medal for Science Communication for her long-term study of social and family interactions of wild chimpanzees. In April 2023, Goodall was made Officer in the Order of Orange Nassau in a ceremony in The Hague, the Netherlands. And that brings us to the end of today's story. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed learning about topic. If you found this interesting, don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. See you next time.